Welcome back to this week's Just a Couple of Jerks with me, Paul Winstanley. This week's episode I'm chatting with Les Pounder from the Raspberry Pi community and a champion of the makerspace. Les is a bit of a legend in the community for the Raspberry Pi. You only need to go to his Twitter account to see how much enthusiasm Les has for the product and for the people who work with it. He's spent a lot of time writing articles for Linux format, and we talk about that. He's got a real passion for Commodore computers. He's recently bought a Commodore 64 and he's playing with that and learning how to program with it. But he's also a big fan of the Commodore Amiga, and we talk about some of his favourite games and the public domain scene back in the day in the 90s. I really enjoyed chatting with Les for this podcast, and not once did he mention Greg's or Poundland. And I was really surprised by that, based on his Twitter content. Anyway, enjoy this week's episode. Just a Couple of Jerks.
No, it did work actually, but I thought I can't really say to the chat now. I'm just going to stop and check this because we were like 5 minutes in.
Yeah.
And he got a nice flow going, so I thought I'd just carry on and keep my fingers crossed at the end that this works. It was absolutely fine. The only one when I've had a problem is a chat the other day where it all got a bit wobbly on his side. All the sound, it was kind of weird. I don't know why. Something not right on his side. And it's recorded, but I'm going to have to chuck it out there with some rubbish audio. So we'll chat, and then at the end, I've never told anyone stick around at the end. I've always kind of gone, yeah, thanks a lot, and then click stop and thought, stay on the line. I'm sure it'll upload, but I'm not sure if you close your browser down what happens. So, yeah.
No, I get you.
Open, yeah. And I don't. You've probably not listened to any because they've all been Windows people so far. But really, we just have a chat and just talk nonsense, really. And that's the format, really. I just talk to you about anything, and I've made some notes, but I try not to look at those at all. So, Les Pounder, thanks ever so much for joining me today on my podcast, which is called Just a Couple of Jerks.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. It's a privilege, actually, Les. And I'm not saying you're a jerk. What the idea is, and I keep saying this at the minute until people get the idea, if anyone listens, is that it's all about we're regular people in IT. We're struggling away, trying to get things working here and there. And when we go into kind of the community and we do things, we kind of get put on a little pedestal as experts. And that can introduce, a bit of anxiety, a bit of stress in your life, maybe. I'm not sure. It depends on what type of person you are. You may just sort of brush it off your shoulder. I don't know how you cope with it. And that, that's the kind of thing we'll chat about. But it really is about just ordering people getting on with it and just showing people that, okay, we're in this expert level zone or whatever. But, yeah, we're just ultimately just a couple of jerks, yeah?
Yeah, I get what you mean, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, thanks ever so much for joining me, Les. Now, you are kind of the first guest in the Raspberry Pi Linux community. And I did have Sam Aaron the other day, but he classes himself as a... Sam's is awesome, yeah. Really, I mean, I do the portable Sonic Pi release for Windows for Sam.
I did not know that. There you go.
Yeah, so I used to do events with Frank Thomas Hockley, who
yes.
I believe you know Frank. Yeah,
I know Frank.
So lovely guy. I'm hoping to have him on the podcast in a few weeks, actually. And I did the Covent Garden Jam with him. He set that up, and I just stumbled into it because one of my boys was keen on learning stuff. and I did some Sonic Pi, and from that, we just kind of learned bits of it, and I just contacted him one day and said, I'd love to do a portable release for you, and he was like, what do you mean by that? He thought it was kind of a phone version of it or something.
Yeah.
And I said, no, just for environments where people don't have admin rights, it'd be great. They can just rock up with a USB stick, run this thing. And he's, oh, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. So, I had him on the show, and it was great. Great. I've never spoken to him before, and I've been working on this with him for a good 4 years or so. But we've just communicated via Twitter and email and stuff like that. I had him on, and it's great. So, but he's kind of he's funding etc. for Sonic Pi from the Raspberry Pi Foundation stop. So he shifted focus to help himself reduce the amount of platforms he was supporting. So officially, he's now kind of Windows and Mac. So I'm treating you as my first Pi guy. Or, I mean, do you see yourself as a Pi guy or a Linux guy?
That's tough, because I do lots of work with Raspberry Pi and I do lots of work with Linux. I'm sort of 50-50. The two are interchangeable. I mean, the Pi is a Linux machine, of course. But yeah, I mean, I'm more well known. This is blowing my own trumpet now. I'm more well known for doing Raspberry Pi stuff than I am Linux stuff. So I've been doing Raspberry Pi stuff now since 2013, when I had my first gig teaching Raspberry Pi to teachers when I didn't know anything.
Is that around, so 2013, now remind me, is that when the Pi launched? Is it the same year, or was that the year before?
It's a year after. The Pi launched in 2012, and I managed to get one about 3 months after it came out, and I thought I was really lucky to get one then. And when I got it, I enthused about it. I said, this is wonderful. I've got a Linux machine that's the size of a credit card, and it can do this, it can do that. And then it went in a drawer, which a lot of Pis do. I mean, let's be honest, and we're not on a downer here, let's be honest. But then I found use cases for the Pi which made me think, oh, I can use it for X, Y, Z. So I did. So I started learning stuff with the Pi. And I became self-employed in 2013, and I was writing magazine content for Linux Format at the time under Graham Morrison. And
so you were already doing that around that time, yeah?
Yeah, around that time, yeah. Just it was unpaid back then. I was working on the community page, and then I suddenly got made redundant, and I thought, wonder if I can get paid for this. So I contacted Graham, and Graham said in about 2 emails in 15 minutes, yes, you can. Okay, here's your first gig.
Great. So that took a bit of pressure and stress off you, because you suddenly got, so you been made redundant. Had you been working in that role for a little while, had you?
A little while, being the operative word, yeah, 6 months, that was it. And then it was a mixture of, I wasn't really happy where I was, and the boss didn't see my role going anywhere. So it was mutual.
Right, okay. So, and obviously being made redundant and not having worked in that role for much time, you're not being given any support income-wise.
No, not at all.
So that's the thing. So you're thrown in that situation. So you're kind of not pleading, but could you help me effectively? Yeah. Could you pay me some money to do this? And so you get a little bit of money from that, which obviously helps. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it, and it helped me to keep a bit of income coming into the home, to keep the home going, etc., etc. It also helped me to sort of slowly increase what I could do. So I used to just write the community page, so 1 page a month, talking about Linux user groups around the UK and the world, talking about events that I'd gone to, just evangelizing about the whole Linux user group experience. And then I was asked to pitch for more content. And at this time, I just bought myself a Firefox OS phone, if anyone can remember them. Yeah. My first ever tutorial was nothing to do with Python, Raspberry Pi, or anything like that. It was to make an app for the Firefox OS phone, which would load up pages from the Linux Format website and also give basic information on Linux commands, all in with one simple little app. And I was really chuffed with that. Looking back at it, oh my word, it was awful. But at the time, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, cool. I mean, we can do that in hindsight, can't we? We can look back at the things we've done and go, "Oh my goodness."
Oh yeah.
But I can imagine when you did that, you would have been pretty proud of it, or
Oh
chuffed with
yeah,
it.
definitely. If at the time it was a big piece of work for me. It was 4 pages of content about how to create something, and I thought, man, this is wonderful. It's brilliant. This app is fantastic. But looking back, yeah, it's awful. It's the second piece of work I ever did. For this was for who was it now? It was for O'Reilly, their Safari books content.
Yeah, yeah,
The second bit of work was a Python program which just blinked LEDs. Now, if you're a seasoned Raspberry Pi hacker, blinking an LED is like, yeah, we've all done it. But if you've never done it, it is mind boggling because you have to connect up to GPIO, tell the GPIO what pin numbering you're using. You're going to tell it, is it an input, is it an output? And you've got to say, right, turn it on, turn it off, use timings. And it's all this big mess of information trying to take in all at once. Now, when I wrote this code back then, I was using the if else conditional statements. And I'd just gone through a whole list of if, then else. That was it at the end. And it looked hideous. It worked, but it looked hideous.
it worked. Yeah, it worked is the key thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been there. So my experience with pies progressed to blinking lights on and off, and doing some of that at code clubs. Now, my dad, I used to sit down with him as a kid, and he was an electrical engineer manager at the coal mines up in Yorkshire,
Yeah.
and none of that rubbed off on me at all. I didn't have a bloody clue. And he'd sit down with me to do the physics homework. I said, Dad, I've got a circuit board here and I really don't understand it. And he'd just go, oh, it's really simple. It's, yeah, it is to you, mate. But to me,
Yeah.
it's meaningless. And when I finally picked up the Pi and had a go at it, stripped right down to its basics. I've got some wires here. I've got a breadboard. I've got the pins. I've got an LED. Oh, I've got this resistor thing. And I remember the resistor as a kid going, what is this like, zigzaggy line thing on the
Yeah.
diagram? What is that? Why do I need that? Well, you soon find out if you're faffing around with the LED lights because you'll just blow
Yeah.
them. Okay, so it's resisting. Finally, it's clicking. And I did a really simple thing, and I thought, you know what? This is a few years after my dad had died. And I'm thinking, I think he'd be pretty chuffed to me doing that.
Oh
So
yeah.
I felt quite proud of just achieving that.
Well, that's it. You remember that. You remember that now, don't you? That's the whole thing. You've crossed that bridge. You've made that
Yeah,
first attempt to get it done, and you've learned from it. It was difficult, but you've learned from it, and you've got these lessons, this failure in your head that you've got that says, "Oh, I got this wrong. How did I get it wrong? How do I learn from it?" And that's a great
exactly.
accomplishment.
Yeah, how do we learn from all this stuff? It's all about making those mistakes, isn't it? And picking
Oh
up the
yeah,
pieces and going, okay, why did that happen? And next thing you know, I'm progressing onto traffic lights, and it's like, wow. And next thing you know, I'm like in a code club teaching kids how to do this, and I'm thinking, God, I hope they don't ask me questions if it goes wrong. But then they do, and then you start learning from that.
yeah,
So you did those community articles um, for the magazine. You were doing those free initially.
yeah.
Um, and how did that come about then?
It came about because every month I was writing into the magazine telling them about what Blackpool Linux User Group was doing or what event I'd been to. Because at that time in my life, I was going to different events around the Northwest, and there was quite a big, vibrant community, usually based in Manchester, where there was this tech community just hosting free events, and you turn up. You learn great content from bar camps and on conferences. You get fed. You get to go and meet other people, go out for drinks, and then you learn more information on Twitter because Twitter had just started back then. That's how long ago it was. And I just sort of fell into that scene. So I kept writing into the magazine saying, "Oh yeah, I've been to this, I've been to that," and they said, "Right, do you want to write the content for it?" And I'm like,
Cool.
"Okay then." Now, at that time, I didn't want a second job. I didn't want paying for this because I was working in the government at that time. So I said, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it for nothing. Just tell me how many words you need, when you need it, etc., etc." And away it went. And that happened for about 3 years, 3 or 4 years. I did that, and I just slowly went on to writing more content for them. And now I've been writing for the magazine. It's my 10th year writing for them.
That's pretty cool actually, and all stemming from just writing to them really, and they just turn around and say, "Oh, help us out." That's
Yeah.
pretty good actually. And so you were involved in those events, sort of attending and that sort of thing. I can imagine back then, or when the Pi came in, you probably saw a shift where you've now got a younger audience.
Yeah.
Um, you've got kids and that coming in and wanting to learn things. So when you're doing that sort of work, how does that change in the way that you write for that, or
I
does it?
always, yeah, it does and it doesn't. I mean, the main content that I write is beginner tutorials. And the tutorials are aimed at a beginner of any age, of any ability. I always take it that the person has never touched this piece of kit before, knows nothing, but has read the headline and thought, wow, I want to play with that. So they're sitting down and they're going to learn the basics and then come up to building something at the end that they can show to their other half, their parent, their friends, their neighbours, whoever. And it's taking them by the hand and giving them the information that they need, not necessarily the full technical documentation they need to get the job working in a business environment, just enough to pique their interest so that it keeps them interested, happy, gives them rewards as they're reading the content. They understand what's going on, and at the end, they've got this thing to show off to someone important in their life.
Yeah, and it gives them that opportunity, doesn't it, to start to research it a little bit more and find
Yeah,
out a bit more about it.
yeah.
Um, so was this something that the programming side, is that something you were always keen on then?
The programming side came in by pure chance. So I'd been self-employed for about 3, 4 months at this time. So we're looking about no, it's about July 2013, roughly. So about 3 months. And there was a company who were doing teacher training, and they wanted to do teacher training in Manchester using Python. So they contacted my friend Ben Nuttall. He used to work for Raspberry Pi Foundation.
Yeah.
He's now moved on to the BBC. Good luck, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben said, "Sorry, I can't take on the gig now because I'm going to work in Cambridge for Raspberry Pi Foundation. But my friend Les Pounder, he knows lots about Python." So they contacted me and said, "Hi Les, can you do some Python stuff for teachers on Monday? Blah 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 blah. Lots of information about what they wanted me to do." And you've heard the phrase "fake it till you make it." I may have done that. So I had a weekend to learn Python
Oh, geez.
enough to teach teachers how to teach Python to children. So that involved a weekend of Python books. It was Python for Rookies that I initially read, just a very old book now. It's Python 2 only. But the book just absolutely clicked in my brain. It worked. That and half a bottle of rum may have helped. It
Yeah.
worked.
Hopefully not while you're trying to teach the teachers.
Oh,
Just
no.
when you're learning the scripting yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, is it the Balmer's curve or the Balmer's peak? It's called, where the amount of alcohol in your body, if you get it just right, means you're receptive to learning. Kids don't do that at home. No,
No.
um, it's it just all clicked in. It's Python for Rookies book. It's old. It's Python 2. If you ever see it in a shop for a couple of quid, pick it up and have a look. It's fun.
Wow.
Yeah, this
So when you came, so you've learnt that in effectively a weekend. As much as you can, you're cramming it in. Are you kind
yeah
of like stressing out about it though, or you can, oh my
yeah
god, on Monday I'm going to be right in the thick of this.
yeah. So on the Monday, I was teaching Python to this group of teachers. And on the Tuesday, I was doing Raspberry Pi. So there was an initial one session of Raspberry Pi, which was a full day. But this is where it gets a little bit interesting. It wasn't Raspberry Pis connected to screens with keyboards and mice that you could just, use as a normal computer. No, the computer, so their Raspberry Pi, was VNC to their laptop, and their laptop was using VNC to connect and do the Pi stuff and what have you. So we had to take a load of networking gear because there was no Wi-Fi back then for the Pi. It was all cabled network. So I had a 24-port switch in a suitcase, roller suitcase, coming on and off the train with 24 Pis, keyboards, mice, etc., etc. And that was a great time. And then you have to do all the networking because your laptop becomes sort of the router, so to speak. So there's only one connection to the host Wi-Fi. Your laptop then shares it to all the Pis, and wow,
Jeez.
yeah,
A bit of an experience, one that you don't forget, really.
yeah. Once it crashed on me completely, and I lost all networking. Every single Pi would not do anything. So
God.
luckily, the class that I had were also booked in for learning Python. So I switched the slides over and went, right, we're doing Python today.
Oh, thank God for that. Yeah. Oh God, that was lucky. Because otherwise, you're just going, oh, what now? What now? What do I do? Got to sort this. And that's when you're under pressure. So that reminds me of setting up the. So I managed to get a ton of pies through Frank that were handed out for Co Club use,
Yeah,
and I took them to the Co Club in Brixton, and just trying to set all that up beforehand, and they didn't have the capability to put them onto the screen. So again, we had to do the VNC thing,
yeah,
and just trying to get all that set up ready for the start of the lesson um, was so running around like mad to do it. And then the kids all turn up, and you're like 3/4 of the way through, and you're like, hold on a minute, don't touch anything. Uh, and of
yeah.
course, kids are gonna touch everything, aren't they? So
Oh yeah,
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 great. It's fun
definitely.
and games, but some great experiences from doing it. So as a kid, then Les, was IT something you're into then?
It was, yeah. Yeah, from being how old was I? About 5 or 6. I got my first computer, a Commodore 16.
Oh right,
Um,
okay.
I'll be honest. When I was 5 or 6, in fact, going up to about 11, I wasn't really interested in programming whatsoever. It was just a case of it's a thing to play games. It's a thing
Games
to
machine. Yeah.
mess around with. So Commodore 16 and 64, I did very little programming. A couple of lines of basic here and there from magazines, but nothing really big. When I
They'd
got to
drive
the
you mad though, wouldn't they? So
oh
you'd be
yeah,
like, I've done all that. It doesn't work. Oh Christ! On to the next thing. Get the games back out.
yeah. Well, there's one magazine listing I remember typing in. It was to make a gunshot sound, and it was about 2 pages long. So I knew nothing about saving files because back then I had no way to save them apart from saving to tape, which I only learned about 3 months ago when I got my new Commodore 64. So
Oh
okay,
right,
didn't know about that.
lovely.
Yeah. So I just typed in his listing and it didn't make the noise, but I didn't know where the error was because it said there was an error on a line somewhere. I didn't know. I had no
Didn't really
idea.
tell you anything. No.
No. So I didn't know about the programming paradigm, didn't know how things work. So it just used it. You just typed in these letters and numbers and magic happened. So I went through all of that, and it was when I got to the Amiga stage. So I had an Amiga 500, the Batman pack for anyone who's excited about Amigas. That was a classic
Oh,
pack.
me.
Oh, that was a great pack. That brilliant. Oh, we can evangelize that for days. Anyway, um,
So what did you get in the Batman pack? Go on.
you got Batman.
Batman, yeah, an
Batman
Amiga.
Museum Story,
Oh
Amiga
yeah.
500, the original, with only half a meg of RAM, which was tiny. It was plenty for
Did you get an
games.
upgrade?
Oh yeah, that was the next birthday present. Yeah, went to Elm Computing in Blackpool, and they fitted it for me, even though it was just like a trap door to open. I
Yeah.
was what was I? Was 9, 10 when the Amiga came out, so I knew nothing about fitting this thing. So this guy put it in for me. Brilliant. I had lots of games, another 10 games with it, lots of Signosis games, and I had Barbarian, so I learned how to chop people's heads off.
Oh
That
yeah.
was
Yeah.
not in
That
real
was
life.
Wolf from Gladiator, wasn't it? On the and what's the name? The page 3 model on the front of the cassette
Yeah, I,
disc or whatever.
I remember watching a video about Barbarian, the making of it, and it had that picture, that iconic picture, and they said about how they had to tame it slightly when it was re-released
Right.
because it was a little too involved and a bit,
Right.
for the 1990s. Yeah, interesting.
Well, there was a big backlash about that game, wasn't there? Because of the heads flying off when you could
Yeah,
swoop round and slice off the head.
yeah. In Germany, I believe the game had green blood. I
Right.
think if I've watched the right YouTube video. Anyway, it,
Just to make it
I,
unreal.
yeah, I love that game. That was great. That and Smash TV. Smash TV was great. But yeah,
I
the
never played
Amiga
that
is
one.
brilliant. If you ever get that for the Amiga, get two joysticks and plug them in. One's direction to move and one's firing direction. It's brilliant. complete waste of joystick, but just makes it so much easier. Um, but yeah, this Amiga that I got, it was a graphical interface, so I was working with a GUI. I had a desktop rather than just a command line, so I was messing around with Amiga DOS and Workbench and learning how to do bits and pieces there. So that got my interest, and I used to make floppy disk magazines because I learnt the command load WB to load Workbench. So I could make my own little disclaimer at the start in a big screen saying, "Hey, welcome to the magazine, blah blah blah." Then give a timer, then load Workbench, and bang, you're into the desktop and a disk full of games and utilities, which I thought was fantastic. I didn't have a big readership. I think it was about 6 people, but I think two of them were parents. But
Yeah, yeah. No, we had we had a friend of mine who I lived with at university. He was from Wakefield, and his mates ran Team 17,
nice.
who, yeah, Body Blows, Super Frog, all this stuff.
Project X.
And yeah, oh yeah, oh god, yeah. And he used to get the games and bring them up. It's like, oh, I'm gonna back home to Wakefield for the weekend. I'll see if I can get some more games off them. And he'd rock up with all these, and they were pretty decent. They were good software company.
Oh yeah, I love Team 17.
Yeah, and they had a public domain store as well there in Wakefield. I think it was 17-bit software. I think it was
17-bit
the same
software, yeah.
people.
Yeah, we had a PD store in Cleveland, just north of Blackpool, and that had just shelves and boxes full of PD games that you could search through. And I remember going there at once a month, I think it was, when my dad could be bothered to take me because I'd be there hours. And I just go through all these discs and I just see all the stuff done by Tobias Richter, I
Oh
believe it
yeah,
was,
yeah.
and Eric Schwartz, all these animations.
Tobias Richter, did he get involved in that Star Trek game?
Yeah,
Was he involved in that?
yeah, he did lots of Star Trek stuff back in the day, and he got involved in Star Trek in some capacity. I'm not too sure which capacity, but I know he is part of the Star Trek team now, in a sense.
Right. That's not
But
bad, is it? From doing these
no,
little PD discs.
it's brilliant. And I just put these discs in and just watch, the scene from Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the Enterprise leaving space dock. Just
Yeah.
watching it, it just loops over. It's only 15 seconds long.
And you'd be like, that looks like the movie, you'd
Yeah,
say in your head, wouldn't you?
yeah,
Even though you look at it and you go, actually, I couldn't handle that really. But in your mind, it was photorealistic, wasn't it? I actually I actually did a Star Trek episode guide that got released by 17-bit software. Use it. There's a little cover disk tool called Hypertext, I think it was,
hmm,
and it was kind of, in a way, my first introduction to the internet, not the internet, but hyperlinks, because
yeah.
this thing was, it created a book that was all based on links, hypertext or whatever. And I bought this hand scanner that
Oh,
was
yeah.
awful. Yeah. And I had the old Star Trek DC comics, and I used to scan them, and that would create my image. And I decided to do a whole episode guide for the original series. I don't know if I did the
Brilliant.
whole thing, but yeah, that got. I mean, it's no, I don't think anyone ever really bought it, but and I've not got the discs anymore. But that got released by them into the public domain. So that was
That's
my,
brilliant.
we'll call it a claim to fame at all, because it was dreadful.
But it's something in your past that you're particularly proud of. I mean, it's a piece of work. It wasn't a small piece of work, to be fair.
No,
I mean, the hand
no.
scanner alone takes nerves of steel to operate.
Oh, geez, I can imagine there's loads of wobbles and everything on the images, and yeah.
Yeah,
Bear in mind, I'm a student at this point, so not much else to do, and probably had a few drinks or whatever as I'm doing it. So it was pretty desperate. But you're learning stuff, as we say. It's all about that.
yeah,
So when you had the Amiga, then again, you mentioned about the Commodore 64 and all that.
yeah.
Was it mainly games for you, or were you dabbling with it on the programming side?
A little bit of programming on the Amiga, not too much. Just mainly command scripts, shell scripts, that sort of thing, just to automate certain processes. There was a little bit of Amos, the Amiga game creation tool, Amos Basic, but I never really got my head into that. It's something I could sort of dabble with, but not not to an extent that I could produce something useful. At that time, I was messing around a bit more with. I always get this the wrong way around. Is it Imagine or Lightwave? There was a cover disc on Amiga format, and I think it was Imagine, which was a 3D rendering software for the Amiga. It took days to render something, but I can remember rendering a very simple scene that I put together, just some spheres in coloured background and that. And I was massively impressed that this little computer could do that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think Lightwave is what they use for Babylon 5, isn't it?
That's it.
The first season or so, they used Amigas to.
Yep.
I mean, God knows how long it took. Like you say, they
Yeah, it
must
was
have had
Video
hundreds of these
Toaster
things.
as well, wasn't it?
Oh God, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
remember that. It's a great little machine. I mean, you think about it. 1 mega RAM,
Yeah.
and did all all these little things. We used to use it for music creation as well. So we had Optimed, and we'd have a load of Optimed samples, and we'd try and make tunes up. They were terrible. We made one called Pant Dropper, which was there was an advert at the time for Wrangler jeans, and this lady got off a horse and said to the guys, "Right, are you going to take down your pants, or do I have to do it for you?" Obviously, she's talking about jeans, and she's in America, and that was the main sample on it. But it was,
Okay.
hook it up to the telly, record the sample, job done. Didn't quite set off the music career that we hoped, me and my mate, but we still talk about it to this day. Yeah.
Again, it's a learning experience. It's what we all face when we ever learn any skill, even if it's not in front of a computer. We have a go. It might sound absolutely awful, but we had a go. We can learn from it.
Oh, we had hours of fun just prattling around with it, and no music knowledge whatsoever, which I managed to apply to Sonic Pi as well. I mean, I
Yep.
can play a bit of guitar now, but back in the day, it was like I don't know how to do a drum loop, so I'll just
Yep.
use a sample instead. It's much easier.
And again, going back to Sonic Pi, that makes it so much easier now because you can just say play sample,
Yeah.
and it plays it. Play sample, no, 2 times do. Play the sample. It loops it. You can then change the speed. You can add reverb sound effects. It's fantastic. Sam should get a lot more credit for Sonic Pi than he gets. He deserves a hell of a lot more.
Oh yeah, yeah. And he gets a huge amount of pleasure from doing it as well, obviously.
Oh yeah,
Um, even going back to Optimed, just prattling around with that, just hours and hours of fun. Just
yeah,
trying things. It used to get frustrating that we ran out of memory so often because we had 4 channels and we couldn't, we didn't have much space to try things out.
yeah.
And then you'd load up all this stuff and be like, I can't actually do anymore because I've hit a max there. But great fun, great fun.
Oh yeah,
So, I mean, were you kind of teenage years then? Were you when the Amiga was
yeah. I was
big?
about 10 or 11 when I got my first Amiga, the 500. I sort of had that machine until I was about 14 or 15. I also got another Amiga in that time. I got a 500 plus because the guy who ran the newsagents down the street from us sold his complete Amiga collection for quite a nice price. Now this was a 500 plus. This is where I'm going to get really nerdy. A 500 plus with maxed out RAM. He had a GVP hard drive slapped on the side, one of those Zorro slot SCSI hard drives, with a whole 40 meg of hard drive space.
Wow.
I know. It had I can't remember what x86 architecture it was, but it had an x86 processor in there as well to run PC stuff. I think it was 286, so you can run some 286 software as well. Printer, a proper Philips CM8833 Mark II screen, and just stacks of proper software like Wordsworth for DTP and that sort of stuff. It's like, wow. It was like a full thing Amiga. It was brilliant. And that lasted for quite a long while until I went to the dark side and got a 486 PC.
Right. Yeah.
And then, yeah, then I
Had to
just fell
happen,
into the
didn't it?
trap. It was just Doom. That's what did it for me. You couldn't play it on the Amiga, so I thought, I need to play it.
Yeah, well, we had the Amiga, so there was 3 of us in a flat, and we had my Amiga. The other guy had a 386, 486, maybe a 286 as well. I can't remember. And then there was a Super Nintendo,
Oh, great
Then
console.
an Amiga 600. Yeah, students say.
Oh yeah,
So many plugs,
lots of
and
plugs.
wires everywhere.
Yeah, the Amiga 600. That was a good machine. It didn't get a lot of credit because everyone saw it as just a 500 plus with the numeric keypad sawn off. But that was a great form factor if you just wanted a simple computer just to get cracking with Amiga games, etc. And it's so upgradable. It's got the same upgrade path as a 1200. You can stick in a compact flash hard drive. I've done that to one of mine in the loft, and you can put all your games on. And you can sit and play Monkey Island on an Amiga, and it's all on the hard drive. Brilliant.
Yeah, I used to mock him for having a 600 though, because I had a 500 and it's just nice and big. No other reason. But Monkey Island, so there you go. I mean, that's a classic.
Yeah.
First video game I actually ever completed.
Oh,
Um,
brilliant.
yeah, and I remember the end bit. Yeah, it was fireworks at the end and credits and all sorts of stuff going on. And I think because back then, obviously, you couldn't go out searching for the solutions to things. And I think there was maybe one bit where I got stuck, and I think possibly Amiga Format had got, a cheat sheet thing, and I looked at it, and that. But the rest of it, I did it all. And I was so chuffed about it. And it's a classic game, and it's one of those I'm thinking, oh, we're in lockdown now. Why not just have another
Yeah.
crack at it?
Why not? I mean, it's usually on the Steam sale quite a lot. Or if you go to Green Man Gaming or stuff like that, cdkeys.com, you can pick it up for a couple of quid.
Yeah, it's a classic, and I did dabble with number two. I wasn't as impressed. It started off all right. I kind of lost interest in it, but yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those memorable moments of just mucking about
Yeah.
and achieving achieving something in life. Finish the game. So what? So go on, give us your top five Amiga games then, Les. What would you recommend? And I can imagine, and I'm going to guess here, Cannon Fodder will be in it.
Cannon Fodder is definitely in it. That was just superb, that game. And I played that recently. I I did a write up about 18 months ago, I think it was, for Linux format, where I used a distro for the Raspberry Pi called Amebian, which turns your
Yeah,
Pi into an Amiga.
yeah,
And I set up a perfect A500 setup, and using the air quotes now, which you can't see on a microphone, but I was playing and testing Cannon Fodder
testing.
for a
Yeah,
good 6 hours one day just to make sure it fully worked.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
You've got to, haven't you? It's a
yeah,
hard life.
yeah,
Make
definitely
sure it
hard.
works. You don't want this to fail on people.
No, that's it. It's got to be right for the reader. If it's not right for the reader, we don't do it. So yeah, Cannon Fodder was that. Monkey Island 1. I also like Monkey Island 2, but we'll just say 1. Monkey Island 1 was the classic. It was
Yeah.
The puzzles were stupid but great at the same time. I mean, using the
The
policeman rubber
frustrating
chicken.
one, I found that one where you did the sword fight. That's one it really annoyed me.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I am rubber, you are glue. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, it was great.
Just wanted to move on, didn't you? Just get past this bit and then we're off.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Um, I also like the bit in the forest where you're walking around the forest and it says insert disc 14, insert disc 16,
Yeah,
insert disc blah blah blah, and you're just going what?
yeah.
You think what's going on here? Then it's a joke on you.
Mind you, with your
Um,
40 meg hard drive, you wouldn't know how to do that disk swapping, would you?
oh, the first time I played it was on
Luxury.
disc. Yeah.
Was it right? Yeah,
Oh, none of that hard drive until a few years later.
yeah.
Next one for me is Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge 2.
Oh, geez. Do you know what? I was playing that the other day as well.
That's great. That was a brilliant driving game.
Yeah.
Compared to your Forzas and all that sort of thing these days, I sound like an old man now. Sorry, kids. It's massively simple, but back then it just felt like you were driving a Lotus at high speed,
Yeah.
and it felt
And if you
brilliant.
think about it, the car's not even moving, is it? The
No,
car's stuck in the middle of the screen, just doing that little bit of animation to turn it left and right.
yeah,
You're moving the track around. You're going up and down. You feel as if you're actually turning the corners.
yeah.
It's a real car,
It was
almost.
amazing. And then
It
you,
is. It's a
of
good game.
course, you put in the cheat as well, Turpentine, which
Oh
I
yeah,
remember.
Turpentine. Jeez, you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah, this is where we go really esoteric now, talking about cheat codes for 8-bit and 16-bit computer games. Um, Yeah, so let's see. That's three, isn't it now? What's the fourth
That's
one?
three.
Hmm. Fourth one would be Another World. Even though I didn't
Oh
get the
yeah.
most from it, it was so stylish. I mean, the opening intro was just mind blowing. Where the Ferrari pulls up, there's a screech, the guy gets out, gets a can of Coke, drinks the Coke, presses this button, and he goes into another world. And then you're instantly transported into this realm where these wiggly creatures that you walk up to have a fang that stabs you and you're dead. And you're like, what happened? You didn't realize you
It got
had to stamp on them.
got killed too many times and too quickly on that game, but I always used to love it. And it's just the
So,
animation on the guy, wasn't it, when he was moving around and climbing up and down things
yeah.
and getting the gun out. Did he get the gun out? He had a gun, didn't he?
Yeah, you had a gun later on, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because you'd use the gun to shoot the vine or something, to cut a vine down to jump across and do
yeah,
other stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a quality game.
The last game I'll mention, so my number five, is Batman the Movie, which came with my Amiga 500 back in pack. And that was great. It mixed side scrolling, jumping around, where, you have to climb up platforms, beat up bad guys, throw the Joker into that mess of goo, which turns him into the Joker. And
Yeah,
then you had levels where you got to mix up chemicals to get the right mixture to save Gotham City, because they're all going to get poisoned by Joker's brand X killer chemicals. No idea how I got past that bit, because I just sort of waggled the joystick and pressed buttons, thinking, "What am I doing?" But it was the driving bits again, and it was really simple. It was just a Batmobile or the Batwing just screaming down this pathway, you firing out some sort of harpoon gun to turn a corner, or using your blade on the front of the Batwing to cut balloons to save Gotham City. It was just a great mixture. And the music was superb as well. It felt really like you were pumped to play it.
right. That's the only one in your list I've never actually played. I'll have to check it out. I didn't get the Batman pack. Um,
Have a go.
yeah. No, I'd what would I add to that list? Speedball 2 was a biggie for us to play.
Ice cream. Ice
Yeah, ice
cream.
cream. Yeah, friend of mine I live with used to annihilate me every time on that. I'm sure there's some kind of um, trick to playing it, but I could never work it out, and I get leathered every time. Um, Lemmings was a biggie for us.
Yeah, lemon pepper.
Um, we used to play not sensible soccer, but you remember Dino Dini? He had kickoff. We didn't play that. He
Right.
brought out a game called Goal afterwards.
Oh, goal. Yeah.
Yeah, and we in 1994. This is again being students, nothing else to do except study, of course. We had a tournament. There was 8 of us, or however many, one for each group stage of the World Cup, and we play the match that. So we had a team each. Say I was England, another guy Germany, whatever. We'd play the game that was about to be played in real life just before that actual match.
Nice.
And then when it was the computer generated teams, I'd just play a computer match. And we just went right through the whole 4 week tournament, right through to the finals. I lost in the final, so a bit gutted about that.
Robbed.
But we had one guy who had bought an Amiga just to practice this game. He was so competitive to
Right.
practice it so he could win the competition. And I took him on in the semi-finals, and there was the whole room were chanting for me to knock him out. And at the point where I think we'd gone in, I think we were drawing, or I don't remember exactly, but we'd gone into extra time, and a goal had been scored. I don't remember by who, but he kicked the power pack, and it knocked
Oh.
the game out. It turned off the computer.
Ooh.
Oh no! It's like, jeez. So we had to restart from. We knew how many minutes or seconds were left, and carried the game on from there. But geez, that's the most competitive game I've ever been in ever. It was tense. It was it was bigger than the actual. Put the real semi final on afterwards, and no one cared. But yeah, good times to be honest. And that's it's a computer I cherish. I've still got it in the loft area, but I obviously do the emulation side of it, and I'll get the RetroPie out, and I did the Amiibian thing as well to play with that. And it's great, but it's not quite the same. I think, Pinball Dreams and Pinball Fantasies, that's another couple of games I used to love. And the keyboard on the 500 was just perfect for doing the flippers, the shift keys.
Yeah.
But trying to do that on a Windows keyboard or whatever you plug in, I've noticed one shift key is always bigger than the other, and it's never right. It just doesn't feel the same than playing it on the original hardware. So you mentioned earlier you've gone out and bought a Commodore 64. Is that an actual original machine then? Is it, or is it one of these kind of these newer ones that they kind of got USB ports on the back and that?
It's an original one. So middle of last year, I was doing a bit of messing around with emulation of Commodores on Raspberry Pi just for fun, and I got into the scene again. So I watched a few videos on YouTube, and I just thought, I think I might get one. I'm going to keep an eye on eBay and see, what the prices look like. And the prices for Commodore 64s on eBay, wow, especially at the moment, they're expensive.
Are they?
Yeah, wow, about 120 quid is the average price.
Jesus.
It's
Is that because they're getting harder to find, or
yeah,
becoming quite a collector's thing?
the Commodore, bless them, we're never the best company for sourcing quality parts, and especially their power supplies. Commodore 64 power supplies will just kill the Commodore 64 after about 30 years. They're really dangerous. So the machines are getting harder and harder to sort of find, and what are available are used as donors or for spare parts. So the one I've got is a Frankenstein. It's a bread bin case, but inside is a shortboard from a Commodore 64C, I believe it was, the one of the later models. Now, luckily, it fits in and all the ports are in the right place. But you can tell it's been dabbled with. Well, the big thing is it's got Jiffy DOS, which is an alternative kernel. So I can go from standard Commodore kernel to Jiffy DOS, which loads disks and files a lot faster at a flick of a switch. That was a good investment. But it needs a bit of TLC. So right now it needs retro brighting because it looks like it's been kept in a smoker's house for about 40 years.
Right. And so is this the thing where you clean it all up, is it?
Yeah, so retro brighting is where you clean down the case, remove all the oils, and you put your plastic case, not the electronics, just a plastic case, in a big tub with hydrogen peroxide and other. There's different recipes for making retro bright, but it's a chemical reaction. So you put this plastic in the big bucket you've got, the plastic case, put it in the sunlight, hydrogen peroxide cream all over it, or in hydrogen peroxide liquid, water it down, leave it in the sun until it goes the shade that you want it. It's a lot more technical than that, so don't take my description as the instructions, please.
Don't grab a 500 now and start dabbling, though.
Yeah, you're going to pull it out and it just melted. Yeah. And you can get some really good results with RetroBright, but you have to do it properly and do it right. Otherwise, you can damage the plastic
Screw it all up.
really badly. So I've done RetroBrighting before. I had an Apple keyboard for all the geeks at home. It's an A1048 Mac keyboard from the G3 era, just before the metal Mac keyboards came in, and I quite like that keyboard. So I spent a very long time RetroBrighting that keyboard and all of the keys and cleaning it. In fact, the best part of 3 days.
Wow.
When I really should have been working. And yeah.
We're playing cannon fodder, whichever, yeah, testing it.
It's fine. And they came out really well, but fortunately, about 3 years after I retrobrighted them, they've now gone back to looking completely yellow because it's temporary. So my Commodore, I probably will give it a clean and try a bit of retrobrighting, but maybe not, I don't know. But it does need a clean up and a bit of work doing to it. But it does work, and I've used it in a couple of videos on YouTube where I've been messing around with Commodore just because you can. And I love it.
Messing around in what way? What kind of thing you're doing? I mean, I'll take a look at the vids actually, but is it games? Is it programming?
It's programming because I never really got into basic programming back then, but now I am because I've got the knowledge of Python and Node-RED and a bit of JavaScript and Bash, etc. I can now sort of understand what's going on in that basic program. So I'm using my knowledge from what I know now to apply to what I should have known then to create some interesting stuff. So I got a user port breakout board from Canada from Sigzersky Systems. Very hard to pronounce and spell, but it's a great board. And it just plugs in and it gives you GPIO for your Commodore 64. So I wrote a blog post on how to control the GPIO for 64 in BASIC to make LEDs turn on.
Do you know? I think I saw this actually. Yeah, yeah. It's quite recent, isn't it? You did this.
Yeah, it's about 2 or 3 months ago. It's great fun. I mean,
Because
flashing
I was
LED.
thinking, well, I was thinking, can you do this with? Obviously you've got a Pi, you've got the pins there. Is this something you can do with a Commodore 64? Obviously,
Yeah,
you've done it with that. Yeah.
yeah. You've got limited GPIO pins, but you can do it, and it's not too bad. So I did that as a project to mess around with. But just before that, I had a project where I had a video capture card. So I have a video capture card for my PC to do video capture from laptops, from games consoles, etc., for magazine articles. And I thought, I wonder, can I plug in my Commodore 64? So I went on a crusade via Amazon to get all the parts necessary to do it. And I managed to capture the video of my real Commodore 64 in Open Broadcast System, OBS, and do all this whiz bang stuff for the programming of the GPIO. But I also thought, could I pipe that video into something and just use my video capture card and PC as a monitor for the C64? Because that's clearly how I think. And yes, I could. So I was piping the video from my Commodore 64 directly into VLC. And I had one of the old demos playing. I can't remember which one it was, but just a demo playing. I was like, oh, okay, this is useless, but it's fun. I've learned quite a lot.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing. I did. So for the thing the work that I do in Windows, I do this thing called SCCM, which is about Windows deployment, and I decided to use a PowerShell script to trigger from an event to trigger Sonic Pi through OSC. No, is it the OSC? Am I right? I don't know. I can't remember now. It's a while back. But causing so Sonic Pi is listening for something, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you send this event, and it wakes it up and goes, oh yeah, I've received that, and then it just fired off a sound effect on Sonic Pi. So I had a sample of Star Trek klaxon going brr, brr, sort of thing. So red alert, and just, is there any real benefit to doing that? Not at all, really. But just mucking about, and like you say, you can do it. So why not?
Yeah.
I can imagine in an office, you go, okay, so I need to know when a Windows 10 device is built. I'll have this klaxon go off every time, just annoy the hell out of people,
Why not? Yeah.
Why not? You can do it. It's when people start, triggering things to tweet them and that sort of stuff. Which is it that Node-RED you mentioned? Yeah.
Yeah.
That can do all that, can't it? It can you go through the flow there and trigger something to output to Twitter and
Node-RED is amazing. It's really good. It's like Scratch on steroids, basically. It's brill. So
I mean, I dabbled really briefly. I was thinking I don't know what I'm doing, so I'll leave it there. But what kind of things can you do with it then?
Whatever you want to do. So the basic stuff I do with it is controlling GPIO and LEDs and motors, that sort of thing. I've got a Christmas tree that comes out once a year, usually at Christmas. And
makes sense.
Yeah, it's completely controlled in Node-RED, and it's just a Christmas tree with NeoPixels all over it, a Pi at the base of it, a nice custom power board that I've built to make it all nice and safe with fuses and capacitors and that sort of thing. And I have an app on my phone, which is really the web page served by Node-RED. So Node-RED will have a local IP address, and I have a certain link that I can follow on my phone, and I can press the button and mix the RGB and change the color of the LEDs to anything I want. And it's been running now for, this will be the third year this year that it's run. And it's brilliant. It just works. And I haven't got to touch it or update it. It just works. It's brilliant. But on a larger scale, this isn't what I've done, but you'll know Professor Lucy Rogers on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She has a hack once a year called Black Gang Chine, which is on the Isle of Wight, which is like an amusement park. Hopefully not a Scooby Doo amusement park. That'd be scary.
Yeah.
Um, and they have dinosaurs, and these dinosaurs are animatronic, and they've been there for years. And they were used to be controlled by this really elaborate system, which was going out of date and breaking down. So once a year, Lucy organises a load of geeks and hackers and makers to go to the Isle of Wight and spend a weekend hacking dinosaurs to life with Node Red. And it's like, wow. So the ride operators don't need to know any programming whatsoever. They just know that they've got buttons in Node Red. So if something goes wrong, they know what to do and how to change the flow.
Right.
It's like, wow, so that Stegosaurus is now going to start screaming at someone because of this input from that dinosaur. And they all talk to each other via a network. Like, wow,
That's pretty cool.
that's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, definitely. I mean, you strike me as someone you're always tinkering,
Yeah,
from what I can see on Twitter. So this, you're always getting something sent through, or you bought something, or whatever.
yeah,
And you're always playing, you're always messing, and that, to me, that's great because this is now your job. Yeah.
yeah. So I'll
I mean,
pick up
what a
bits
great
and
way to
pieces.
live.
It's good fun. It's always challenging. You always have something new to learn. So this week I've been messing around with old school analog electronics. So I've got in front of me right now my desk, which is just a sea of components and everything. I've not tidied it, which is great. It's inspiration. That's what I say.
It's all within reach.
Yeah. I've got in front of me now a 555 timer, the most basic timing chip you can think of. And there's probably about 2 dozen in your living room that you don't know of. They're in DVD players, they're in VCRs, they're in tellies, they're in your computer's going to have one somewhere for timing, for powering up, for starting up the system. They're everywhere. And they're about 2p each. They're nothing. So I thought, right, I've got loads of these. What do I do with them? So I looked up a few videos on YouTube, understood how they worked badly, but I had a rough idea. And I built a simple flashing circuit using resistors and capacitors in this 555. So now by changing the value of the resistors, I can change the flashing speed. So the lower the resistance, the faster it flashes. And I can make flashing LEDs now with something, let's see, in front of me I've got 1, 2, 4p, 6p, 16p, less than 20p of parts to build a flashing LED set. So I can then apply that to my favourite place in the world, Poundland, get their parrot LEDs they've got, snip the wire, connect it up, and I can flash these parrot LEDs, which were never designed for flashing, and I can make them flash just with 20p extra parts. And that's something that intrigues me.
And so when you're thinking of something like that, is that just you going, actually, I know this will work because I've mucked around with things, or is it I'm going to give this a go and see if it does work?
A bit of both. So there's things that I'll do. So if it's something that I need to do for work, something that's essential for work, it's an application of merging a couple or three things together to produce something new. So coming at it from a different angle. But usually those two or three things I'll get from doing experiments such as with 555s or NPN transistors or some other whiz bang thing I've bought from China for like 50p, and then seeing how that works and put them all together and then make something. There's never really in my brain a process where I sit down and go, yes, I'm going to plan the next 6 months of workout and I'm going to do this, that. I once did that with a lovely big Trello board, but then it just sort of fell by the wayside because the ideas were just sort of coming to me naturally. That doesn't sound too big headed.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, actually, I'll just do this, right? Because a lot of those things that you plan out never really happen because you're too busy in the moment doing stuff, aren't you? Because you just think, oh,
yeah,
I'll give that a try.
that's it. I mean, stuff is in my head that I've been working on this week is I got a new motor board called Maker Driver from the Pi Hut, and it's a tiny motor control board for robots. It's £3 and it's super simple. I did a full test on it. I did a blog post and I tested it with Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and microbits, and it worked flawlessly with very little knowledge needed to get something working, which was great. And for £3, a bit of a bargain. So I suddenly thought, hey, I could merge that with my Commodore 64 GPIO project. And so I'm in the stages right now of just working out the code to do a conditional in BASIC. So if I press F and then enter, the motor spins forward. If I press R and then enter, it spins backwards. All controlled from a Commodore 64, a real Commodore 64. So that's hopefully going to be one of my Friday fun blog posts. Probably not tomorrow because I'm a bit busy at the minute, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, it's looking back to 2013 and that time when you're made redundant and you're going, what next? Did you think you'd be where you are now? The
No,
things that you're doing and playing with,
no,
and
not at
and
all.
you know, how does that work? Because you're just getting more involved. Or is a lot of this stuff you're just purely learning and learning and learning all the time?
Yeah, I am constantly learning. So I'm sitting there at night time, sort of doing basic programming on a Commodore 64 emulator, just to keep my hand in to learn more basic. I'll be doing some Node-RED stuff and helping people to learn a bit more Node-RED. I'll be doing Python stuff. I'll be doing blog posts, etc., etc. But it all goes back to just that initial message from Ben Nuttall. Let's give him a shout out again. Finding out about how to program in Python. If I hadn't have done that, if I wasn't pressed into that situation, because I did need the money, because at that time I didn't have many clients. In fact, I had one, and it was Linux format. And yeah, you need a bit more money than that to pay your mortgage, apparently.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so they say. So if I hadn't have done that, if I hadn't have learnt Python, then I would never have gone to PyCon UK, and met Nicholas Tolliver, who's a fantastic man, absolute brilliant person, and he helped me get into the Python community and understand how Python worked and how the Python community helped each other. And then working with Alan O'Donoghue, techno teacher, to do events and help children to learn more about this wonderful thing called Raspberry Pi. And then it all just sort of built up from there. And I sort of learned more things about communities and people and computer languages and what people were interested in and what was going on in certain scenes, and sort of a bit like the social butterfly, or social piranha as I call it, where going around these different groups and learning different things and applying them in different ways in other groups. And it just helped me to learn more and more skills and make more and more connections. And now it sounds big headed, but now I'm enjoying building these contraptions that I can write about in blog posts and magazine articles that people can now build and have fun with. It's
No,
great.
I think it's brilliant. Um, and it's inspiring to see the stuff that you're doing, helping different generations of people. And I don't know if you remember, I came to you one time because I was dabbling with I dragged this old canine from Doctor Who out of the
Oh,
kids' toy
canine.
chest. You remember? And I was
Yeah.
trying to get it to go backwards and forwards, and I had a weird thing happen in the end where the motor just kept spinning, and
Mm-hmm.
I never got back to it because my problem is I'm juggling too many things, be it Windows based or the Sonic Pi world and all this kind of stuff, and I never got back to doing it, and I ended up I chucked it away, but it's a bit of real waste. But I didn't have a clue, but you were sending me an email going or a Twitter message where we're going. Oh, I'm really interested in see how this goes. I mean, it never got anywhere, like I say, but you were, oh, this is quite cool, and that's quite encouraging for someone like myself who hasn't the slightest idea. And I suppose I can imagine yourself in that situation way back when you
Yeah.
were doing the Python. Where do I go with this?
Yeah. I
So
mean,
when did it?
the thing I think of when I help others is, how was I helped when I first started? So when I first started learning to program, I was constantly asking questions, and some of those questions, in fact, most of the questions, were really stupid. But at that point, when you're asking that question, it doesn't matter if it's stupid. You've got that question to ask. You've got that problem you need to solve. You ask the question. If someone says, "Oh, it's a stupid," then their opinion is not worth anything. You want help. You want help from someone who can help you. And 99% of the people that I've been in contact with about this have been fantastic, and they've helped me. So I think, how can I help others? So that's why I've always written blog posts and magazine articles and just general Twitter conversations to help those who ask the question or have just enough knowledge to be dangerous and want to go further with what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong, is there, with not knowing?
No.
Um, you know, in my day-to-day job, I haven't got a clue at times, and I have to go and read things, research it. But people will come and ask questions
Hmm.
because, as I say, we're this expert level in the community. So people ask the questions. You don't know every answer to it, but what you might do is you might go off and actually just check it out or
Yeah.
ask other people, and I see this. So in the Windows community, in particular in the SCCM community that I'm in, on Twitter, we never see people bickering, never see any trolling going on. And I see that in the Raspberry Pi community as well. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people who all share, all help. And when
Yeah.
I was involved in it, very fleetingly, um, I got quite a few of the big names as such following me on Twitter because I was tweeting stuff out about things. And you follow me, and I'm
Yep.
thinking, he's looking at all these Windows 10 tweets. He's really probably not interested at all. um, and people like David Whale and
Oh, the
Sam and all
wizard.
all these.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, well, why the heck do they want to? But I met David a couple of times, and Grace and Femi. I mean, Grace's first and Femi's first contribution as such to the Raspberry Pi community was at the Covent Garden Jam. And she'll always, before she went out, they went off and set up the South London Raspberry Jam, which we then all attended, and David was there at that one. But it seems to be a community of people all helping each other out. There doesn't seem to be any real animosity going
No.
on there. I'm sure there's a little bit behind the scenes, but online, I don't see that nastiness going on, and that's refreshing. And then that becomes something that people can get involved in, not feeling intimidated in any way whatsoever.
Well, that's it. The general Pi community knows if they've got a problem or a question, they can just ask that question, and someone's going to come back and say, "Oh yeah, I did it this way," or they'll direct them to a piece of guidance which says how to do and solve their problem. It isn't a place where people say, "Oh, noob, go away. We don't want to listen to you." It's always very
Don't want some
welcoming.
smart ass saying, "Nah, whatever, mate. That's pathetic."
Yeah,
You don't need that, do you?
no, not at all. That's not an encouraging community. That's just that's belittling, really.
Exactly, and that helps people to get involved and not fit. I mean, my thing is because I'm not a Linux guy. Um, I'm not a Raspbian guy, but I install it. I set up a Plex server the other day, dabbling with that, and I enjoy playing with the different computer systems.
Yeah,
But I'd sit in rooms with Frank and various other people that are chatting away, and I go, I don't know what they're talking about. But I'd never feel intimidated by it, and it was nice because it was something different to
yeah.
try and learn. Beyond me, but that's probably because I haven't sat down long enough to really try it out. But it's a nice community, and
Yeah.
it's great because it has the youngsters involved as well. I think that helps. It's that next generation of these bedroom tinkerers that kind of stopped in the mid 90s
Yeah.
and onwards because of the growth in the hardware and the games that were coming out. We couldn't create Manic Miner anymore. That wasn't of interest, but now we can, and I think it's lovely.
Well, I say we've got the bedroom coding scene back, and more so now with all the guidance that's out there and all the tutorials. I mean, there's some great Python tutorials for Pygame to make video games in Python, and it's amazing what you can do with such a small amount of code. Pygame Zero is one of the really fantastic frameworks, and you can build a game in about 30 or 40 lines of code where an alien's jumping around the screen. And the sprite is a proper sprite. It's an SVG sprite. It looks crystal clear, perfect, sharp lines. It's ace.
Yeah,
So
and let's
kids,
face it, some of these really simple things can be more fun to play than these complex 3D shoot 'em ups that
Yeah.
I just find are just the same old, same old. But I'd much rather get a little platform game and jump around and,
Yeah.
like I say, pull out the old Lotus Turbo Challenge game and have a blast on that. It seems to get and when I did the Sonic Pi sessions, I used to have a couple of extra Pi set up with the Retro Pi.
Yeah.
And we'd have the kids coming in, and they'd be like on, Super Mario Kart or anything like that. And they'd be there. I mean, even my kids, will pull out the Zombies Ate My Neighbours game
Oh
on the
yes,
SNES. They
classic.
absolutely love that one.
That's great. That yeah.
Keep them entertained for hours. So when you were doing the stuff then, Les, did it become financially viable early on? Did it take a little while to get your
It,
feet in that?
yeah, it took a little while to get financially viable. It was mainly going out to different clients and sort of saying, "Hey, this is me. I can do this," and then seeing where it went from there. So I've been lucky in that Linux Format, who I work with, is owned by Future Publishing, and Future Publishing has got quite a big reach in the world. Some people don't even realize how big it is actually. So stuff like Tech Radar, that's Future Publishing. Tom's Hardware is Future Publishing.
Okay.
I didn't realize that. Um, so no, I had the privilege of working for Tech Radar and Tom's Hardware, writing Raspberry Pi content for them, and I never thought I'd ever be doing that. I mean, Tom's Hardware it's a big brand. Tech Radar is a massive brand in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh god, no, more now. 2015 it was. So it was 2 weeks before The Force Awakens came out in the cinema. I got an email from a friend of mine who works at Tech Radar, who used to work on Linux Format, and he said, "Oh yeah, we're doing a Star Wars special on the website, and we need some Raspberry Pi content. Now I know you do Pi stuff. Can you help me out?" I went, "Yeah, okay. What do you need doing?" He goes, "I want a robot like R2D2," and I'm thinking, "Okay, how big do you want the robot?" And he says, "How big can you make it?" And I'm thinking, "Oh, I can't build a full size R2D2 in 2 weeks, mate. Sorry."
No.
So I said to him, "Let me go to the shops and see what I can find." So I went to Tesco and I found an R2D2 approximately 9 inches tall, roughly. And I gutted it. I pulled everything out and I put motors in, I put a Pi Zero W in, and no, it wasn't Zero W, it was Pi Zero, sorry. And I gutted this Pi, this R2D2, stuck the Pi in, and we had an R2D2 that would run around the desk, and it was really, really cool. I never thought I'd an R2D2 ever. And then he contacted me a couple of years ago and went, "We're doing something for Steam Link for Raspberry Pi because we've got this new Steam Link, so your Pi can be like a console to connect to your main PC running Steam and Windows 10 to play your games." So he says, "Could you do something for me with the Pi?" And I went, "Yeah, okay." So I made a quick script that loads the Pi up and loads up Steam Link and connects to your machine, and then you can play your games without having to press a button. It was great. And again, I spent 6 hours playing Doom on there, Doom 2016,
Nightmare.
which is great. Just testing it to make sure it's right for the customer.
Yeah.
That's the story again. I never thought we'd be doing that.
Yeah. I was going to say, so obviously we're in lockdown at the minute. Has that impacted you as a freelancer at all? Has it, or have you just
Yeah,
been? Is it business as usual?
it's an odd one. It's a mixture of business as usual and not. So I've got the normal clients that I write content for online and in magazines, and that's carrying on as is. But all the work that I do outreach and going out to training centres to train people on Python and electronics and that sort of thing isn't happening because of this. We can't do that at the moment. You can't deliver to a class of 30 people and be socially distant. It doesn't happen. So that aspect of the work has gone. But the other aspect where I'm writing content for people is still going great. So I'm just finishing off this week the curriculum for a piece of software, which is going to be out in I think about a month's time at the most. It's going to be, and it's some software that enables kids to program in Python using blocks. So just like Scratch.
Okay.
So I'm just finishing that off, and
Is not edu blocks?
it is, yeah,
Okay.
done by a very clever young man, Joshua Loam.
Yeah. Yeah. He's just a little kid. Well, I say a little kid. He's a teenager. All
He's
right.
just gone 16, yeah. And he started EduBlocks when he was, let's see, 12 or 13.
Brilliant,
And
isn't it?
yeah, he learned Python quick smart. He then learned how to do JavaScript for the back end stuff of this EduBlocks. And now he's gone far surpassed what I know. Far many, many levels above what I know, which is great to hear. And he's created his own language, and he's helping kids around the world now to learn Python using blocks. And it's that popular. We were at PyCon in the US in 2018, and there was a big at the Python Software Foundation lunch there, and Guido van Rossum, the creator of Python, was there, and he got invited, and me and his dad as well, because we had to go along. Got invited into this big lavish dinner, so this lunch. Um, and Guido van Rossum came over to Josh and went, "Oh, hi, Josh. I want to talk to you about EduBlocks." Now, me and his dad were like that. What? So his dad knows who Guido is. I know who Guido is. And Josh knew the name, didn't know the face. And he goes, "Yeah, I'll show him it." So he got my laptop out and he was showing EduBlocks on it and how it works. And they were doing some microbit stuff. And Guido's giving him some advice. A full hour he spent with him just talking about his software. And then he left and said, "Thank you very much, Josh. That's great." And me and his dad just stood there, slack jawed, like, "Whoa, you got an hour with Guido van Rossum." And Josh
It's
goes, "Oh,
amazing,
so,
isn't
so that's him, is it?"
it?
Well,
Unfazed.
yeah, completely unfazed. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
yeah, it was brilliant. And that young man is going to go far. Seriously, he's going to go far for what he knows.
This is it. When you see people like him and Femi doing stuff, and you think that you guys, you clued up with it. You've got a great future,
Yes.
and just by tinkering away as kids, um, as we say, it's reinvented that ability to do the bedroom coding, and it's brilliant. And the stuff that you put out there, Les, it gives the kids that opportunity,
Thank you very much.
and so the fact that you're sharing all this information, it is amazing, really. And correct me if I'm wrong. Is Linux format, is that basically it was Amiga format that became Linux format, or is it?
It's sort of, yeah. Yeah, there's no direct lineage as such. It's not like a transition from, one day it was Amiga format, the next day Linux format. But a lot of the team at the time moved over from one magazine to another. And sort of the legacy of Amiga format merged into what became Linux format. So the guy who does the cover discs is Neil Bothwick, and he was doing the cover discs for Amiga format back in the day,
Right.
which is unusual because I was sat having a beer with Neil Bothwick about 3 years ago in a beer garden in Liverpool after an event. And I said to Neil, "Hey, do you remember Amiga format?" And he went, "Oh, yeah, I remember that, doing the discs." But yeah, I used to buy that when I was a kid. And he went, "Yeah, now I feel old. Cheers, Les."
Yeah. my claim to fame of in a beer garden and computing was meeting my wife introduced me to the guy who created Chucky Egg
Oh,
for the Spectrum. I can't remember his name, and I went, "Oh my, I'm really glad to meet you," and all this, and he's just like, I was like, whatever. I was like, "Oh, okay," but I was like, "Oh wow, this is the creator of Chucky Egg." Yeah, but there you go. Les, it's been a real pleasure chatting to you today. It really
thank you,
has.
thank you.
We've been chatting for quite a while now, so I think what I'll do, we'll wrap it up. And if you could, because I've forgotten to do this for the last couple, if you can fire off your handles where people can contact you online if they don't know,
Yeah, on Twitter, I am at Big Les P. And my
which I
website,
keep thinking is Biggles for some reason when I
that's
look at it.
that's what Nicholas Tollevay calls me, Biggles. And
Biggles,
in the middle of PyCon, during a big talk on education, he presented to me some Biggles flying goggles.
brilliant.
I'm just going, okay, this is surreal. But it was great. He's a lovely guy. If you want to go to my blog as well, it's got a very vain URL. It's Big Les, BIGL.ES.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I love the kind of 80s, almost Tron style logo that you created, or Hackerman style
It's
logo that you
cheesy,
have for
isn't
the. Yeah.
it?
It's great. But yeah, thanks ever so much for coming on to today's podcast. And
Oh,
thanks for
thank you
being
for
our
having me.
first Pi Linux guy on the podcast, and hopefully we'll get some more. I've got a couple more lined up actually for the end of the month. We're recording these in advance, so I'm backlogging here. You'll still be the first Pi guy out there, even if I record some more. So it's a real pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you very much for having me.